But thank you.
I've never seen one arm of government stand up and another arm of government, or another arm of government
Very fast Monday.
The state legislators were kind of like, they did their job by pushing that. You know, everybody did their job, but the presentations were remarkable.
Was it House or Senate side?
I know.
It was joint, because it was just a committee of the.
Well, right, that's, you know, like,
I
that's,
sleep. Yep.
well, I know it does for me, so.
All right. I would like to call the meeting to order at our earliest convenience. We just have one item tonight. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:09. Apologize for my tardiness. I have some traffic.
And I thought I came back from Madison different times today.
Oh,
Oh, welcome home.
thank you. Okay, we are going to discuss the special event policy, and we have in our packet an updated memo that summarizes our discussion from the previous meeting, with a report back with some on some items that staff has researched or checked with. We also have a draft of that Trustee Marr added some handwritten notes and for our consideration. And so it brings us to, shall I just walk through the memo? Is that kind of?
That would be perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So for clarity, we will walk through the memo.
Yeah, and just so you know, sorry, can I?
Yes.
Trustee Warren, last time, when.
Oh, that's right,
Maher-
so welcome to the committee.
Yeah.
We have a little
Reorg.
reformulation.
Yeah, and thank you, I appreciate it. I anticipate Trustee Bachos is going to offer a little bit of a recap, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it should be in the memo also, but I just did want to let you know that we three last time, Maher, McKay, and I went through and we got, I think, we had a recommendation, so I guess this is a revisit?
Right, so basically we're at the next step.
I think there was a recommendation to be question 3. We were struggling to answer question 3, which staff is requesting input on the following criteria for incorporation of policy. So I don't think there was a lot of we needed some questions answered yet to answer to number 3.
So I think if we walk through the memo, we will
We'll
not
probably-
only recap where we've been, but it will also highlight where we need to go.
Okay.
Fair?
Fair.
And then before we start, please forgive me, Bart and I will be transitioning positions in between committees, so we will be picking up as I need to go to JP now.
Okay. Is there a fashion in which we could proceed at this time to make best use of your presence?
Look, we kind of both are on the same page, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so for purposes of recap, the questions before this committee in terms of this policy. Trustee Warren, are you clear on kind of the history of where this came about?
I mean, I know what's in the memo.
Okay.
I reviewed the memo prior to this meeting, so I'm pretty clear. I have a few questions, but I think those can be answered in due course of us proceeding.
Okay, great. So basically it came down to where it says staff is requesting input on the following criteria. The items in red, the text in red is what we recommended from the committee last time.
Is that accurate? Is it?
That is accurate.
Right, it's not,
Yeah.
is it just those from committee or are there other inputs?
No, that's truly from the committee.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I think to date, the only additional comments we received was from Trustee Marr.
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
Those are handwritten.
Right, so at this point, we just have to consider, and then the emails that are within our packet.
Yes.
So item 1, should the number of special events, streets closings be limited? The committee agreed that the number of events should not be limited at this time. Item 2, should special events, street closings be limited to village-sponsored events? For example, and that basically is the 4th of July parade. The committee agreed not to limit events to being village-sponsored.
So what did you strike me as reflective of our current state? Just maintenance.
Exactly. The, when the suggestion for a special events policy was identified several years ago, it was around the concern that maybe we did need to limit. So basically the committee is just referring to status quo as appropriate. Item 3, should all applicants pay for village services if identified as a need? The committee agreed that more information was required before they could answer this question. So that's what we'll come back to tonight, which will be kind of the meat of our discussion. Item 4, should every applicant be charged a fee? We agreed that yes, that every applicant should be charged a fee, that the fee should be uniformly charged, and that no permit applicants should be exempt. So that means of the permit fee, so which is like $100 or something.
100 or 150, can't 150.
So that means that the Shorewood Men's Club would, pay the fee across the board to 3 Lions Pub and everybody, and the bid and everybody. And that's for the permit. It does not reflect, that fee does not reflect the cost of services that could be charged back to the applicant or absorbed by the village budget. So the items that we requested, item A, the staff was directed to update the policy based on the conversation and add a fiscal note of cost of events in 2018 and 2019. That is attached, so we'll spend some more time with that. Item B, staff was asked to address how this policy would impact existing ordinances. So those are in our packet as well. Chapter 397 pertaining to parades, and Chapter 462 pertaining to street festivals, would be repealed and replaced with a special events ordinance after adoption of the policy. The Community and Business Relations Committee may also consider repealing and replacing the current ordinance, but not implementing a policy. And then special events would be governed by village ordinance and not policy. The special event application would be updated to include information from the new ordinance. So,
Can I ask a quick question here? So, what does having both a policy and an ordinance get us?
That was kind of the question as we, had done a little more research. So there was the request for the policy, which was prior to kind of my time also being here. I know it started. And after kind of looking in, there's these 2 ordinances. So it's tough. The policy would be easier to update small pieces.
that's what I.
But if you have both, it's kind of silly. So you might, it's one of those things, you do not want to move ahead with the policy and just redo the ordinance piece of it.
I mean, it's funny, this is what 2 lawyers talk about. April and I were talking about policies versus ordinances actually this morning. I'm actually not making this up.
Yes.
And, the only thing I can think of is that ordinances that have the force of law, whereas a policy is just a policy at the end of the day.
The other, as we've had discussion amongst myself and Diane and Bart, is general public doesn't realize you have a policy sometimes versus an ordinance. They're checking your ordinance to see what you allow. And after doing some research in other municipalities' special event policies, most people said, like, oh, we don't have a policy, but here's our ordinance, which was similar to a lot of discussion. Correct.
Okay. I appreciate that, because I was concerned of how detailed the ordinance would be, such as like start times and end times.
Right. And some people's were very detailed, some people's were very vague. And it kind of came down to, is a policy more an internal thing, or is it really a policy that, because I kind of view a policy as like your computer policy, what you do with your personal computer versus your work computer. Is it then, should it be an ordinance, since there's 2 ordinances kind of in place that you would just repeal and replace those? So that is a small discussion that probably needs to have a little time.
Are both subject to board approval to both go through the same step?
Yep.
So, is there any other step that we need to do to implement an ordinance we don't want to do for a policy?
There might be a little more some slight attorney time reviewed on it, just, you know, from that standpoint, we typically have a good peek at all of our ordinances. But it's not saying that we can't, you know, take a good stab at it ourselves, so.
Other discussion from the committee before I share my thoughts? I would say, I do like the idea of, I'm kind of doing a 180 because I was feeling like this really feels like a policy and just leave what we have in place because it basically says everything. And yeah, you can clean it up a little bit, but it didn't seem very substantive.
Yep.
But I like the idea that an ordinance that's comprehensive is easy for the public to find, easier than a policy. And it's clear, and then it's just in place. What I would not want to have is something so prescriptive that, you know, down to the times, for example, because those, and so maybe around items like that would line up with a permit, we could have some type of range or that they adhere to noise ordinances or something so that it's what we're deciding here today isn't that different than what we already have in place, that it's just kind of consistent. With the exception of, I mean, I have, my personal position has been I don't like special events on weeknights in our community just because our commercial district is so close to residences that I do think that those are particularly disruptive. Whereas our noise ordinance would allow something until 10 o'clock, you know, presumably. Right. So that would be the one thing that I would not want to have. I would want to have still control over as a board to meet the precedents.
Yeah, you could leave you could leave some things to board discretion.
In ordinance
discretion, yeah, I mean, you do that in ordinance. And again, I do like the kind of transparency piece about an ordinance. I think that if you're going to do an ordinance, you don't want to make, I think if you just kind of make work to do an ordinance and policies are probably.
Yeah. Trustee Bachman? So I think the direction of the committee is.
My learning curve on the whole thing is just over these past 2 weeks, just not up and up and up.
That's been done around the policy, what it would look like as an ordinance. And then we would repeal, there would be one ordinance that would cover parades, special events, street closing, whatever. Street festivals, right? Street festivals, parades.
Street festivals and parades.
Okay. And then it wouldn't be called, we wouldn't need the term special event at all, is that correct? Or is that a third category? It looked, when I was reviewing the ordinances, it seems like when you put parade and street festival together, you kind of get all the special event aspects.
Yes, so I think the idea would be to just have one called special event, so maybe two pieces of both and merge it together was the idea of the original policy.
Yes.
For my understanding. So, and then we just call it the special event permit, which way? Got it. Okay.
So that resolves notes that we received were for Trustee Mauer, that they're attached. We also have a couple of emails.
So I'm
A couple from Mr. Price, Trustee Lyons, and maybe some notes from Ms. Lang, or was that in minutes that I saw?
We had asked at the last meeting, she had some general comments, but then we had also asked for a process. We asked for what level we would want to be included or not included in the special event. So she was responding to that.
Oh,
That was just really nice.
so is that under
Lieutenant decide the
under
new
the
law
minutes, or is that a separate communication?
sold it.
There's
Katie makes me go there.
Yes.
And then move back to the side and.
His
open.
comments, his email is pretty much in line with what the committee was
The
thinking.
things what might do, I recommend that part.
Mr. Price's, I thought it was actually pretty in line with what you were suggesting as well. He shares, you know, his concerns, but I don't think that we're considering any of the things that he's concerned about, so.
When was that?
approachable and amenable to new situations
So I have a
coming up.
bunch of friends who went in college.
Yeah, you mentioned that not one of this an opportunity that arises from the village because you have boxed in, so you want to make sure you want to make sure you have guidelines, but you also don't want to box yourself into where you can't.
Exactly.
Right, and I think our previous discussion in committee had been agreed that we wanted discretion at the board level to. And I think that the purpose of the bid, playing some kind of role is, I think there was a really good example this year of the art festival, the vendor that does the art festival coming to the village and then coming to the bid. And basically the bid saying, you know, we're not going to tell you you can't do it because it's not our jurisdiction, but when it comes right down to it, we have some events that we're very much invested in and we don't want to sacrifice our sponsorship for our, you know, for you to come in and do a new one so that we're not. I think it was a great opportunity to say, to just let everybody weigh in to something new. So I don't know how we would word that in the ordinance.
Yeah, I would like it.
And I don't think you can legislate communication between taxing entities, but
It would probably be more part of our procedure, so the idea of the department is kind of meeting ahead with the applicant. I think we would just include it
Well,
of the bid, whether that's Erica or who she would want to appoint or however that works, would be included. It was one of our first times too, that what do you do when an outside applicant comes and wants to have something in this system?
You could also, in the ordinance itself, you could also say we appropriate.
Correct.
Yes.
Underlying the ordinance when you have your kind of written procedures that you guys follow and have.
Yep.
and then you can interpret what those are
Yeah.
from time to time and decade to decade. Right.
Because they'll change, at some point they'll change, rename.
Yeah, there could be new ones. And part of Erica's notes come right after listing of expenses. They look like our committee notes, but they're actually her committee notes from us, from that meeting. So she took them very similar, but they are her notes and comments.
No, just 99.
Oh, 9.
After the table.
Correct.
So, I have a couple kind of general questions on, I was reading through the policy. I don't know.
Not far from
There we go.
Apart from my
Come to the
Okay,
I'm right in line with it.
tell me, this is more for my education, because it seems kind of, it might be totally normal, but it's strange to me that the village board can deny an application, then the Board of Appeals then reviews that denial. I mean, so it goes to the village board, then it goes to kind of a,
Well, it's quasi judicial, the Board of Appeals is quasi judicial.
I agree with you.
I do agree with you that it,
Because when I heard that, I was like, that's, no, the Board of Appeals does zoning. I mean, they do like, so, and that came from
our ordinance says it that way.
which is not recommended.
So we would take that out in the.
Correct.
By, we
Yeah.
would accomplish, we would resolve that issue by adopting the ordinance.
Correct.
That makes sense, thank you for that catch.
Yeah.
It made sense to me and I was linking it to the beehive issue with that zoning, so
Yeah.
it's a different origination.
but I think you do need some sort of appeal, I just don't, but then you get in kind of a quandary, because you need some sort of appeal process. The question is how to appeal a village board decision.
Well, you don't, nothing requires you to have an appeal process. I mean, typically when you hit the village board, that's where you stop.
Yeah, so that's what I was reading. Okay.
So, you know, I've seen it done that way in other communities for special events. I mean, I can tell you that I've never worked with a community that had an appeal process for a special event permit that was approved by the board.
Concur, no, I.
So that's why when I heard it, I was like, that's,
Yeah,
If that's,
odd.
you know, it's ebbed and flowed.
But for zoning, for example, they will be given that.
Correct.
And
Board of Appeals would be directed in that jurisdiction because of the nature of how they're formed under the statute. But you create your process for special events, so it sits under your jurisdiction.
you know, so people, there's like.
I agree with that.
the other question I have, sorry,
No.
questions, but,
They're smart.
so I read the criteria, and what if, and maybe this is covered someplace else that I just didn't catch, like reasons for denial, what if we just I mean, maybe I just missed it in here, but maybe, what if you just don't think an event would work? Or what if we say like, you know, this is just not the kind of event we want?
Or the plan is not
Yeah.
satisfactory.
Yeah, or you just, you complete the application, but it's just not, it's not spelled out enough. Is there
It's our
some-
discretion. I think it, but I like that you're catching that, because I might have just put it in that we have discretion. That might have been my interpretation of the language, but that it really doesn't say that.
I guess it says include but are not limited to, but, so I guess it's broad enough there, but it could still theoretically, if somebody argued, it's not listed out there. I think probably, now reading it again, include but not limited to, probably broad enough for us.
Okay.
Well, I make sure we clear that with the village attorney.
Yeah, I
So
think that would be broad.
Oh, sorry. So I guess for our discussion here, maybe as a full board going forward, we should try to go back to like, if that's what we want to communicate, we make sure that we give that direction.
Yeah.
So that we're not wordsmithing. I mean, I know you're an attorney, so that's great. You know what I'm saying? So just making sure, so if we all agree that we want to have that discretion, that we should, our note should be that Attorney Garrett is going to draft appropriate language.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Does that satisfy you?
That's good, and I'm not trying to be too nitpicky, just.
No, I appreciate that as well,
Fair
because that's something I wouldn't have thought of either. I mean, just because procedurally, we've always had discretion when events came, but you wouldn't know that, you know,
Because
we've been around the block a few times.
Any other questions? These are good ones, so.
I have one, but I'm looking for where it is, to close this operation down or whatever, I forget to say my change.
I think it's trustee Mara had a bunch of them.
Yeah, maybe we should go through those.
Okay. I agreed with the suggestions, and since we addressed that we would be creating a new ordinance, I think some of this will get taken care of automatically. He, on page, is there anything in particular on page 1 that you wanted to call out of his notes? Otherwise, I'll go to page 2.
I think the last long one, we repeal the ordinance.
On page 2, item number 8, the time of the event, that's where I wanted to reserve discretion. And I think, yeah, that's been a discussion.
And also note that it's still something to all applicable ordinances, otherwise ordinance.
Yeah.
And when doing so, of course, you can grant a waiver.
A variance, a waiver, yeah. You can suspend. I like that he added recycling. And item 11, an adequate provision of event security and public safety. I agree with that. And I think in all of these, you know, inadequate is kind of like a variable, and it also opens up for someone to reapply, you know, or to, let's see. Yeah, the item around village parks, that it should be noted that parks can't be closed just because an event is happening there, but events can occur within parks. Those are the elements. Any others? Did you read those out front?
I'm like, I mean, are we going sequentially here, or?
I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, I went page by page.
Okay, yeah, I'm on page, which page are you on now?
But you have to wait. You expect it by, okay, when the three address.
Okay.
I mean, go for it. Yeah.
It's actually
Oh, it's
two pages.
so much happening.
So with the application procedures, do you want the feedback on these? Because I see some areas that need to be cleaned up, resolved, but I don't, it feels like that's.
Yeah, I think some of it is based on what the policy discussion, correct.
Because I'd rather not get down to this level.
That would be our preference.
Is great.
I think the one question that comes up that isn't fully answered yet is notification to neighbors. Should that happen before the applicant comes? Should it happen after they're approved? And that's always a sticky one, because you want to inform people that they're meeting here to voice their concerns if they don't like or do like something.
Could I interject?
Yeah.
So, I know this comes up a lot, but we can't anticipate everything that's gonna be controversial. And also, not everyone gets approved, and it's, you know, it's costly.
It's costly.
And we also do have a public process of notifying the public what's on our agendas. And I think we've been doing a good job over the years of getting out the communication and increasing that.
Yep.
So, government's responsibility, you know, there's a, how do you call that?
No, ours.
A tipping point,
Ours.
you know. So I am comfortable with continuing to do, you know, to notify people in the various means that we have established. And we can always change those as a board. If we don't feel that we're giving enough notification, I think we should look at that policy. And apply it universally, not just for special, you know, this or that. So, and anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm fine with the notification afterwards, after it's approved.
Rebecca, can I ask just one follow-up question? Just out of curiosity, Shorewood has a lot of events, it's great. Do we ever had a lot of complaints about people not knowing, not having pre-notification of those events, or is it generally? I'm assuming we don't, so we're heard about it.
But you do understand, we do a lot of, there's always a complaint when there's something that's happening, regardless of if it's an event or like trash, you know what I'm
No,
saying?
I totally get it, I just want to know if there's like this, you know, barrage of them, you know, I'm not talking about one-off.
Experience that.
There's all, like, you know, the criterion, someone will come, oh, I didn't know it was this day.
Yeah, I get that.
But that's, I mean, yeah. But some of that is people have to take the time to read it. And things too, so, and you can't force people to do that either, so, I can't say that there's a huge, like, I can't say I walked in after shenanigans and
I mean, I'm not being
emails and emails.
but I've noticed that.
I think just from my limited last year, they typically contact the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's also a good
John's a
complaint.
trooper.
It's not necessarily maybe they didn't know about it, but I've never had someone say that there was a cat.
So, I had someone once, and maybe you could see this as well, complain about an event after the fact, and then realized that it was the wrong event they were complaining about, but then stood by their original complaint.
Oh, no.
But it wasn't about, it was more of like, I don't think you should give favoritism towards this business, and that what business wasn't one for the music. So it was, so anyway, I guess to the point, yeah, I as long as I've been on the board, no, I get more complaints about people's neighbors, people complaining about their neighbors, or, you know, X, Y, or Z that they've ever received. I'm pretty sure about that regarding events. And I hear that, I mean, I would say with, and I'm just not trying to say you're wrong here, but I'm not sure that we have a lot of events in Shorewood. Like my quantification of what a lot is probably different.
And don't, you can call me wrong if you think I'm wrong.
Well, no, I mean, how can I qualify? I mean, how could I argue with that? A lot is
Yeah.
subjective, yeah. So anyway. Yeah, Halloween is the one we always do. I'm kidding.
No, we don't need to be that, I was just kind of curious. I was just curious.
I'm joking because that's my annual.
Yeah, I know.
I think that our current notification requirements are adequate. Or I usually think it's like a 2-block radius or something like that.
And we were kind of good with, you know, whatever was chosen, I just know newer applicants are going to be like, do you want us to notify before, after, or both, or, you know, you get to notify people and then it not be approved.
I mean, if they ask you to say you're welcome to do both,
Yeah,
but you're only
exactly.
required
Kind of
to do
left it
this.
To their discretion.
You know, I think probably their question comes of, is my permit going to be held up because I didn't complete?
Correct.
Or is the absence of neighbor notification, will the board not vote until they know if everybody supports this? And do I have to be all politic for it? And that's why I don't like that, is because it kind of sets up this neighbor to neighbor kind of face off, which I just don't think, it's our job, we either have a policy where we have special events or we don't.
Right, and we're elected to make decisions if we make bad ones. Right. And we will make sure.
So that would be my, are you comfortable? Or do you want to make?
Yeah, again, I don't want to be beat a dead horse here, I was just curious.
It's a good question. Right. So he has some notes on page 6 around recycling containers, cleanup during events so that stuff doesn't pile up, you know.
Yeah, and he's definitely got some good notes that we can consider in our procedures. Yep.
Exactly,
Yep.
then that's nothing that we have to make a decision
Yep.
about. Okay.
Yeah, I really like the recycling.
Yeah.
I mean, the other stuff, I would say use your discretion. on the
Yep,
other stuff.
absolutely.
I think we're all on the same page.
Logistically, if we did include the recycling, does Public Works have additional containers for that?
I don't know, that would have to be a question I'd have to ask.
I know,
Yep.
but I'm just wondering, I guess I've never, because we've never, or have we done that in the past?
I don't know, but I would personally support, I know we're not taking action on it, but I would support the purchase of recycling containers to encourage recycling.
Yeah.
I was just at a week-long training and the site didn't have any recycling, so you had
It's amazing.
35 people throwing away cans every single day. It just seemed like such an easy thing.
Isn't it awkward?
Yeah.
It feels so awkward when in that situation, I would like take my plastic and
A lot of people do, right. So it's sort of like, I don't think anyone would mind
Yeah.
recycling, so I would
And
want
we just authorized, I mean, we changed our recycling policy in this village and purchased a recycling bin for every individual
Right, you're right.
village. So I think we've been demonstrating that we are pro-environment here. And so I think this concurs with that.
So maybe, oh, go ahead.
So if memory serves, I toured the DPW here, don't they have extra recycling carts?
It's possible.
It's not a whole stack of extra recycling.
If they don't, I think we could spend the money.
So
Okay, I wasn't trying to worry, I just didn't know.
It raises a good question, so I guess our direction would be to include recycling as a requirement and a procedure to let us know if there is some kind of fiscal or material impact to a department that would come back to us at a future date, you know?
And I would also, if I could, again, you guys' discretion on what the quantity of recycling and the needs are. That's not a micromanage, like we don't, you are more adept at making those decisions.
Thank you. And under section F, village board review and approval, he circled the language that says upon confirmation by the village president, the application will then be presented to the village board at the next available meeting.
Yeah.
And he asked, what does this mean? So I think that that is a good question. I don't know if that has
I
been
think
particularly.
it's just to have, like, what a board agenda would go on, and maybe it's just worded really badly.
Yeah,
I can't, and to
It
be honest,
sounds like it could get
Yes.
hung up there. and
Yes.
I don't think that's the intent.
okay.
right, and I don't,
And because once it's cleared from an internal review, then we would just schedule it.
I would just, I would strike that portion. I would
Okay.
say after village staff evidence,
Yep.
whatever, just,
Yeah.
that stutter step isn't,
Yep.
it might hold up
Yep.
business.
And some of this is some old language taken out that we
Yes.
used, and it worked at the time, so.
Sure, that's great. Anything, trustee Warren?
Oh, no, I was gonna move on to the next one.
Great, let's move on to the next one.
I was gonna suggest, I think he points out very well, major, minor, what does that mean? I might just, the first one I might resolve by just removing major, if there's a change in scope, that's gonna be a major. We can count that as a change that we wanna know, that we need approval. Minor changes in dates, duration, location, and event. I mean,
Yeah.
it's discretionary what constitutes minor. And I don't know that there could be a minor change in date, I don't know what I do is minor. If we move something from Saturday to Sunday,
Like Halloween, for
you're already high.
Wait, what, is that coming up tonight?
It's one of those, if somebody says, oh, if we call and can we change this, would it be a big deal? I think it's one of those things, what do we bring back to, what do we not?
I think date should probably come back.
Oh, yeah, that would say date.
Right, if your application is incorrect, if we're approving an application,
Yeah,
or you're modifying an application, like that, it
Yeah.
both requires going through this process.
right.
Oh, I see, I'm reading it, and that goes to the village man.
Here's what I would consider a major change in scope.
Okay.
Because I work better in examples. So we have a parade, or we have an event that's happening in one of the parks, and it's just supposed to be, a picnic. right? And then all of a sudden they come in and they say, well, but we want to bring in a band now from 6 to 9.
We need a short-term cabaret license.
Right. I would consider that a major change,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because different levels of anticipation from public.
Yeah.
When we have a minor example, if an event's going on and Diane comes to me and says, Rebecca, this is what was approved for the event, this vendor is coming in, they're asking if they can park their vehicle, they're doing it early in the morning, and the vendor needs to come in and stage a vehicle so that it's there the next morning and bring it over at 6 a.m. to park. Can they park in Lake Love parking lot? I would say that would be minor to me.
Yeah.
I guess, and tell me if I can be totally wrong here, so feel free to tell me if you, but you know, if you had an attorney, like if you had Nate write this, he'd probably just say, what you should go with is either a material change or a non-material change to the application. And maybe that's not completely transparent to, I don't know if that's well enough understood, but you know, kind of if you're writing it from a legal perspective, that's how you would draw that line.
I like that too. One thing I also do like is giving the discretion to Rebecca, because ultimately she is beholden to us. So, you know, if she were to go granting a bunch of willy-nilly stuff, then we have a course for remedying that. You know what I'm saying? So, but I hear what you're saying. As long as it doesn't deny her the ability to make some quick decisions that she considers minor.
Sorry, you get totally sued.
Because a lot of times these policies are also, they're more for staff, or as much for staff as they are for the community,
Yeah.
so that they don't have to come and ask all these questions all the time of us and, you know, hold up the process.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying. So I guess any kind of modification that we make, we're going to make sure that, again, we're trusting that staff is doing their job the way they should, and then if they're not, that we deal with that issue, I guess.
Yeah, I'm certainly not.
Most of it I would characterize as minor. It's the day, you know, this event is going on this weekend, it's Friday, and it's 3:30, and it's like, come back, like, is she still here yet? What can we do? But it's never a substantial change.
Yeah, or, you know, like, if you wanted to set up an hour early, but it was still in our time frame. Some of that, you know, and it's tough too, it's very closing the street. I think the big thing is like, people come in for an extension of premise, and it's already, there's no more board meetings in between. It's like, I can't approve you for that.
Right.
It's too late, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
things like that, so.
I do have a question about the written approval. Is that standard language? Do we give, it's in that same major minor. Once approved by the village board, the special permit application cannot be modified without prior written approval of the village board. Is that standard for us, or decision, or like, does it?
I know, that was what was included. Oh.
Could you just circle that whole area?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
See what makes sense?
Yep.
And then kind of communicate what we discussed.
Yep.
Okay.
And we are on the procedures and at the like, for a review and approval.
Freezing.
Anything?
Oh,
It was hot before.
It was very hot.
smoking?
This is, any other items on that section?
No, not for me. Oh wait, Trustee Warren, you wanted the appeal process of denial? Did you want that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Rebecca said. but-
Okay.
Thanks,
So I think we're
We
okay
need
right
to,
now.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Just so, you know, just to keep the flow going, I had one area of chapter 397 parades. It was page 10 of Trustee Marr's document. And I just circled the definition of person because I felt like it was more inclusive than any other definition I had seen in the other related documents, and I feel like that would be a good one to use.
Okay, good.
Did either of the other trustees have any comments regarding, I mean, I think it's kind of moot because we're going to repeal these two ordinances and combine, but if there's anything like you really loved and you don't want to lose or questions, this would be the time to raise those.
Well, I would again want to go back to the intent of the revisions, which you just also stated that this might be quasi-moot.
Mhm.
As long as what the overarching ideas that we've communicated
Okay.
are consistent, then I'm not sure that we need an
Yeah, and you know, if we need to fill in the blanks, you know, we can certainly take from the
Yeah.
old ordinances, which are going to be repealed and put in the new ordinances.
Okay. So that leads us to the most important discussion around this
Yep.
is the cost.
The cost.
So as you will recall, there is staff cost and material costs associated with events. And so that's why we were provided with the fabulous, very, very helpful chart. I really, really appreciate. Did you put this together?
This is all Chief Miller and Leanne, took their time to give us
Okay.
cost based upon the last events that we've had in the last 3 years, so.
I'm going to make a note to thank them directly, but please convey that at the next staff meeting, because this was really helpful. So basically, around the idea of trying to understand, typically when we grant a special event permit, up until, you know, with a few exceptions, I guess it was when, you know, singular businesses came and started saying we want to have a block party kind of thing, like 3 Lions with the World Cup and Camp with their Packer party. The village said, you know, we approved this event, but here's the cost associated with it. And it was to the proliferation of events that the cost became an issue. And it came to the attention of the village board. So we've kind of been wrestling with this. And so this is a great time to kind of decide whether or not, basically the committee in the previous discussion kind of said we really need to think about whether we charge across the board, whether we don't charge back those costs and we just absorb them, or we come up with some formula that's like, you know, a single business has to pay all the costs, a nonprofit has to pay 50% of the costs, you know, and then from there, like a tiered approach, right?
Right.
So I asked that, you know, since we didn't even really know what the fiscal, basically the bottom line is that special events have a fiscal impact. And we as a board are not taking a policy stance on that fiscal impact. And we hadn't even quantified it in order to assess what the impact is. We just know that it is. So that's why I suggested that we go back and we look at the events that we typically have over the course of a year, which also tells us the number of events that we're handling, but that what are the potential chargeback costs associated with each of those events. And then that would give us the chance of coming up with a global fee that kind of averages out, and you can say, you know, a street festival usually accrues this level of cost to the village, and we would charge that back automatically. Like everybody who closes the street pays $1,000 in fee in addition to the permit fee for chargeback costs. Or we itemize the chargeback costs and you pay the whole amount. Or we say tax levy, okay, it looks like we can be hit with $10,000 to $15,000 worth of service costs, additional service time, and staff time for 12 events over the course of the year. We're just going to keep that in the tax levy and have a line item that says street festivals, special events, and we pay for it out of there. So that we would actually budget for these types of costs and not charge them back. So that brings you up to speed with where we are, and that's why this chart is before us. And so I guess I would like to hear your thoughts on this data to begin with, and including staff, because it may look different to you. I've seen it all in one place, and it may.
Can I ask which page you're on, which class?
It is, you mean I talked all that?
Well, no, I
No, I'm
was
just
looking at
kidding.
all the different costs associated with Milwaukee and other events.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
not that. It's right after the procedure, so it's above the bid responses, and it's got the yellow.
Do we have page numbers or anything?
Yes.
I guess page 13.
13, thank you.
Of the packet?
Of the packet.
Okay, not of Monterey.
Thank you.
Correct.
I always forget that those page numbers.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
And 13.
Just like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as I went through this, I mean, that's a lot of different options. You know, the most common sense thing to me, and again, this is just it's the first time I've grappled with this policy, is to charge back what the event costs and then leave it to the board's discretion whether the village wants to make a contribution to that particular event.
Right. So that's what we've done in the past, and it's put the board in a situation where we're accused of playing favorites. Well, that's one complaint. I would say not an accusation, but it's a concern, I would say. That it puts the board in a subjective, a discretionary role where it can be perceived from the public that, that tavern got this for free and this tavern didn't get that for free, or, whatever.
But which is also
also
what we can deal with, because we are elected officials.
We can, so we can do that for sure. But staff was
Right,
also
no, I get
looking
it.
for some consistency, because at the point of application, they are in a position where you might have to pay for staff costs, you might not have to pay. But if we have an ordinance where it's discretionary, everybody would know that. It can also lead to a place where we're having a discussion about what counts as a nonprofit or what counts as a village sponsor. And again, do we really want to revisit that every single time we have a thing? And from experience, I kind of feel like we have been in that space and it probably hasn't been the best use of our time, but that's my personal opinion. So I would say, my inclination is that to the extent we can get to some type of guideline or clarity or protocol that addresses the fiscal impact and establishes that our support for special events, because I think we all agree that they're good for the community and the community appreciates them. I would like us to get to that so that each board doesn't have to rehash what's valuable and what's not.
I get it, that makes sense. I mean, the other thing I was thinking is that there might be some events that have kind of a closer, I was thinking along in terms of ties to the village.
Yeah.
There's events that are kind of a specific and close tie to the village, maybe those are ones you want to reimburse. But if we can't draw that line in a way that's not arbitrary, I certainly don't want to. I don't want to give any kind of appearance that we're favoring certain businesses over other businesses, because that's not what we're doing. So.
Well, and we also, another concern was that we're charging the same tax base, basically, so if the bid has to pay for the costs, it's their tax base, it's the school, So, Trustee Bob.
So we had this discussion many years back, or a similar one, and some of the things that we considered at the time were some of the same things that you enumerated just recently regarding, all right, would we have a certain fund, and we don't have that, we don't have a special events committee or, what's it called? Yeah, budget or even policy, well, this is policy, but committee. And one of the thoughts at the time was if we did have a set amount in the budget, it would help incentivize those that want to do an event well in advance instead of more of the last minute kind of things. And then there would be, you would be, and not saying that we would automatically waive them, but you might be eligible to have your fees waived if your application is in by X deadline. I mean, these were just brainstorms. I'm not saying I completely agree or disagree with the thoughts, but I did find that kind of fascinating at the time, and it might be kind of slightly, that, it allows people who are planning ahead. But I wouldn't want to just grandfather people in just because they've done certain events in the past, because there are plenty of, newer events that people benefit. So it's tricky because I understand that staff wants, I don't know a way around this other than these